The following paid program is furnished by Coalition Radio. It's for basic entertainment and informational purposes only and is solely responsible for its content. It does not necessarily reflect the views of Cumulus Media, its management, or its staff.
You're listening to the Coalition, AM 790, Facebook.com/Coalition Radio. Your source for news, information, and all the sides of the issue. Well, folks, it's vacation time, it's candidacy time, it's election time, so again, I'm running solo this week, but we've got a great show today. As so often happens in talk radio, you go into the weekend, what's going to happen? What can we really talk about? What could possibly go on after a Friday afternoon in lovely Little Rhodey? Well, Rhode Island is what I would call a target-rich environment. There's always something to talk about. We've got a couple of guests coming on today. We've got Jared Moffett from Regulate Rhode Island. Some big news hit the New York Times today. We've also got City Council candidate John Florence, who's going to talk to us about casino gambling in Newport, really from the ground floor's perspective as a citizen patriot, and as someone who's, again, like a number of our guests, got a significant investment in the community. But I would be remiss if I didn't discuss, I'll call him Rhode Island's very own Cato Kalin. Now, you have to be of a certain age, but Cato Kalin's name became synonymous with house guests everywhere. Cato Kalin, of course, was infamous if you're of a certain age because he was the permanent house guest of one O.J. Simpson during the nefarious, well, somebody killed O.J.'s wife and somebody killed O.J.'s wife's boyfriend. And, well, the glove didn't fit, so they got acquitted. But Cato Kalin became everybody's kind of a sponging house guest slacker. And we've got one of our own here in Little Rhode Island. Who knew? A. Ralph Mollis. Well, first we're treated to news that A. Ralph Mollis, of course, now, possibly in anticipation of a early retirement from the world of politics and the world of state employment, has taken up abode in the Exeter ranch of our own governor, Lincoln Chafee. Hey, Ralph, after all this money, after all this time, after all these state jobs, after being mayor in North Providence, this is what it's come to? Now, of course, everything always comes together in Rhode Island because it all comes back to Rhode Island. Great, great article every weekend by Peter Fitzpatrick in the, Peter, as I like to say, don't call me Bud Fitzpatrick. Little inside humor there. And he talks about a gentleman in the Secretary of State's office who was nominated for a national award. A little bit more on that later in the show. He was nominated for a national award because of his courage in standing up to what is commonly referred to as the Three Stooges episode in North Providence politics, where three city councilmen were indicted and then convicted on a variety of fraud charges regarding a Stop and Shop, where basically they sold their office for some pretty short do-re-mi. What I found fascinating is that this gentleman ended up winning the national award, but in true Rhode Island fashion, he wasn't nominated by A. Ralph Mollis because, well, as we know, A. Ralph Mollis used to be the mayor of North Providence. That is, before he became Secretary of State and before he decided to run for the job that's too small for such a small person, the lieutenant governorship, in a transparent bid to maintain some level of state employment. Because in Rhode Island, you either work for the state or, heck, you work out of state. So my hat's off this week to our own Cato Kalin, A. Ralph Mollis. Ralph, keep working the system. And if this whole lieutenant governorship gig doesn't work out for you, you know, there's got to be a federal HUD job out there somewhere. There's got to be a Department of Transportation job out there somewhere. There's something out there. Fret not, because you have a future in government employee. You have a place to go. You'll always have a warm bed. And what do they call it? 3 hots and a cot? There you go. We're sort of in a lull, election-wise, right now. You're in the run-up to the Labor Day weekend over the next few weeks, and you know, the candidates for the gubernatorial position have decided to, with the one notable exception, have decided to remain adrift, if you will, out of touch from the common man. They've decided to shape their message from afar through a series of expensive and, I'm sure, taxpayer-sponsored advertisements. So in doing so, when you combine that with the boycott that's taking place across talk radio from these same candidates in a rather transparent bid to shape their own message without having to suffer the slings and arrows of the working class, of the working stiffs, or as we like to say on this show, the ham and eggers like me. In this type of lull, there's a vacuum for news. So what happens is, much like in the run-up to, say, the World Series or the Super Bowl, you've got all sorts of conventional wisdom starts to pop up. And the most recent case of conventional wisdom is that Claiborne Pell is, in fact, a legitimate candidate for governor, that he is actually closing the gap. Now, of course, who's promoting this conventional wisdom is, well, his handlers. And, of course, the various unions that are in lockstep to support him, recognizing that the gravy train begins and ends with Clay Pell. I don't see them piling on for Gina Raimondo anytime soon. And, well, Angel, I don't think they have an appetite for. I think they say Angel is, well, the fallen angel, or as they might say, damaged goods, given the impending bankruptcy of La Prave. So they've all jumped on this candidate, Clay Pell, who, again, attempts to shape the message from afar, really having no direct contact with the electorate, at a series of staged managed appearances where he's in comfortable surroundings, where he's being fed answers, where he's being, asked comfortable questions by comfortable people who are in his camp, in an attempt to sort of prop up this fallen candidacy. Folks, I don't see it. I just don't get how he's going to be able to make up the 25 or 30 points despite spending millions and millions of dollars. Now, I want him to stay in the campaign, just for sheer entertainment value. And listen, he's a one-man economy in Rhode Island. Even if only a fraction of that money is being spent here in Little Rhodey, I'm all for people destroying their own financial future in a vain attempt at some sort of vanity play at high office that they have no qualifications for whatsoever. It's part of the American way, and it's certainly part of the Rhode Island theater that we call the electoral system. So go for it, Clay. Spend the money. The media out here needs the money. Rhode Island cries lonely eyes for you. We want you to stay. In fact, I'm suggesting, Clay, that if you don't get the Democratic nod, then go the write-in route. Spend lots of money printing up write-in tickets. Go the write-in route, please. Whatever you do, as we like to say, how can we miss you if you won't go away? This week we were treated to the reemergence of his lovely wife, Michelle Kwan, the figure skater, who I guess is no longer embarrassed about the whole Prius thing, and she's actually going to join back in on the campaign after a conspicuous absence. Celebrities have won before. Patches Kennedy comes obviously to mind. Celebrity families with a lot of money, we just seem to have a soft spot in our heart for them. Her campaign contributions and his campaign slogans seem to be nothing more than platitudes, generalizations, cliches, non sequiturs, and attempts at feel-good legislation. Lots of broad, vague generalities out there with no real substance, no legislative or executive experience to back them up, nor any real concrete plans on how to ignite them. It's sort of the gubernatorial version of running for high school class president. At any point in time, I expect Mr. Pell to come out with that age-old canard. No more homework, and we will get better French fries and ice cream. Well, that's the music, folks. Coming up in the next segment, we're going to have Mr. Florence from the Newport City Council. You're listening live, the Coalition on AM 790 Talk Radio, your source for news and everything that matters in life. We'll be right back at you.
Manchester 65 is New England's newest live music and events venue. If you're not completely enjoying your current live music experience, there is another option. Manchester 65 is large enough to support touring acts, yet small enough for that local feel. For upcoming events, go to manchester65.com. Make it your place. Manchester65.com.
ProvidenceNightOut.com is a one-stop destination website where you'll discover a comprehensive guide of everything that the Providence area has to offer. Nightlife, entertainment, dining and dancing, community and family events, and so much more. Download the free app called My Night Out. It's ProvidenceNightOut.com.
Mike's Professional Tree Service offers top-of-the-line tree removal, trimming, stump grinding, stump removal, and so much more. Mike's Professional Tree Service will do everything to safeguard your home and property and is fully licensed and insured. Call them today at 401-823-7485 for a free estimate on tree service, tree removal, trimming, and tree care. That's 401-823-7585. Mike's Professional Tree Service are the tree experts serving all of Rhode Island. Online at mikesprotree.com. That's mikesprotree.com. Midday Records is a label that is comprised of local artists and exists for the sole purpose of helping other local artists find new opportunities and to help build a more thriving New England music scene. Midday Records hosts the area's fastest-growing music-related networking event, the Midday Social, books Midday Records presents shows throughout New England, releases compilations featuring local music, promotes bands through the Midday blog, are the co-founders of Music for Pause, and has recently started an artist development and management division. Stay up to date with Midday Records by checking them out on your favorite social media site like Facebook and Twitter, and find them online at middayrecords.com. That's middayrecords.com.
The Dennis Miller Show on AM 790 Talk and Business.
Paul Ryan proposed a new plan to merge up to 11 anti-poverty programs that he said would allow more flexibility, boiling down 11 anti-poverty programs to one, more flexibility, more ability to watch over it to help lift people out of poverty. Hey, Paul, why do you hate poor people so much?
Smart, entertaining, and relevant. The Dennis Miller Show, weekdays at noon on AM 790 Talk and Business. Your home for Yankees baseball.
Well, folks, welcome back to the Coalition on AM 790, your source for all sides of the matter. You know that music. Normally, this is about when we break into my weekly diatribe rant about our friend Joe Paolino, self-described Meister of Middle of Spring, meets Monaco. I'm not quite sure what he's calling his development this week. Is it Jobs for Newport? Is it Rebuilding Newport Grand? Is it Monaco Goes to Newport? I'm not quite sure. But instead, we're going to take the high road this week. We've got with us today John Flores. He's running for Newport City Council. John actually made a fascinating and incredibly detailed post to a website that we're big fans of, NoCasinoRI.com. I commend that to your attention if you want to filter through the hype and get to the reality of what Newport Casino Grand means to the Newport Island and the Aquidneck business community. John, are you with us?
I am. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on. John, I love the post, but first let's get a little background. Tell us about yourself, your investment personally in the community, and about your city council district.
Certainly. Well, my wife and I, we live here in Newport with our two kids. Little boy's 6 and little girl's 9 years old. I own a company called Drupal Connect, and we are actually a web development company. We work with medium-sized Fortune 500 companies. We work with a lot of universities like Harvard, Yale. A couple of years ago, we were voted the second fastest growing company in Rhode Island by Inc. magazine, and the fastest technology company by the Providence Journal. And I've been living in this community now about 10 years, and I visited once. This was 11 years ago at the time. I just moved back from California, and I'm originally an East Coaster from New York City. My wife is from North Kingstown. And on a day trip here, I completely fell in love with it. And 30 days later, I think we bought a house here. We just bought a house here. We fell in love with this beautiful community that's so unique and just filled with boundless levels of beauty. So I've got a good day job. So if I don't win in November, that's okay. You know, and I decided that I was going to run on a very basic principle, and that is that I'm not going to run on issues. I'm not going to position myself on issues based on whether or not they're advantageous for me getting elected in November. And that's something that I personally feel passionate about with candidates And oftentimes, a lot of my peers, they're keeping quiet on certain hot topic issues, such as the casino. So I'm trying to do it a little different, right? I'm trying to be a little different here. This is an issue that is very dear to my heart because it directly affects the long-term economic viability of my community here. And that's very important to me.
Well, talk about Newport for a second in the sense of the different facets of Newport. I mean, we all know, obviously, Breakers. We all know the mansions. We all know the beaches. We all know the seafood and the summer lifestyle. But Newport, there's a lot more to it. And I'm not sure if folks, Flatlanders, Mainlanders, whatever you guys call us under your breath as we clog up your beautiful city in the summer. Tell us about the different aspects commercially and just give us a sense of the community itself.
Well, it's a very unique community because it certainly is driven by tourism. And, for several months out of the year, it's very thriving and a lively community. And, come the fall and into the winter, it really changes its dynamic completely. There isn't as strong a sense of a community as there could be. And some people argue that this is really because we cater so much to the tourism industry and to the people that come here during the summer and early fall months that we neglect our own community, right? So a lot of people, myself included, one of the things that we're trying to do is really open up the communities for greater diversification of jobs. Mm-hmm. Right now, the service industry, and I've got a lot of great friends, and I'm very proud of what we're doing in terms of the restaurant, the nightlife here. But the fact of the matter is that when my kids, when they come back from college, and they're probably going to live in my basement for a few years, but after some time, they're probably going to move out to Boston or New York or someplace where there's just greater job diversification, there's greater job options. And that to me is a shame. That to me is a shame because we live in such a great community that if we had green jobs here, we had biomed, technology jobs, we'd be thriving in a far more substantial way than we are at the moment.
How important is it for Newporters to determine the future of Newport? And that sounds obvious and sounds almost cliched, but in so many communities around New England, outside investment interests are coming in. And New London was a perfect example of that a few years back, where you had sort of eminent domain perverted to support the needs of outside real estate investors who then abandoned a product which essentially left the community in tatters. How important is it for folks from Newport who live there, who made the type of investments over, say, in your case, a generation, in some cases, many generations, to dictate and determine the process? We
have to. I think it's every citizen, every community has a responsibility to make their community a better place. What I found during my brief campaign here, which started in June, is that Newport is very fortunate. We have a lot of forward-thinking people that are very like-minded and really care passionately. I lived in New York. I've lived in San Francisco. I've lived in a lot of different places, but I can say that the passion that is exuded from many of our community members is a passion that it's rarely found anywhere else in any other community, and I think that's one of the elements that makes it really unique. Now, we have to take certain things with a great level of importance. Our unemployment rate right now in Rhode Island is about 7.7% versus a national average of 6.3%. But more alarmingly, I believe it's the State of Rhode Island Division of Planning came out with a statistic that Rhode Island is losing more residents more rapidly than any other state in the nation. And the population of Newport is expected to drop by 23% over the next 3 decades. And they specifically cited the reason for this for job loss. And that's alarming, but I'm an optimist. And I feel that collectively and with the right tools, the right strategic approaches, we can reverse that trend. We have the ability to do so. Some of our leaders, they haven't stepped up to the plate. So I think the citizens really need to unite, the ones that are really passionate and don't have specific personal agendas in mind. Unite and really create a forward strategy.
I continue to be impressed, as I mentioned every week, with you mentioned a great word, it's passion. The passion from the folks at No Casino RI, because it's just not a group of people who are focusing on one issue. It's not a NIMBY crowd. It's nothing like that at all. These are people who have a lifetime of investment in the community, who really, they personalize things. So much of Rhode Island have abandoned that sort of personal investment. And I can understand why, because there's a survival instinct that's taken place in so many aspects of our populace here, because they're just trying to get through the day. But what I see in Newport is real passion and a real personalization of the issues. These are folks who really care about the community. And when you combine that with an established economic base, Newport is the economic pearl of Rhode Island, isn't it? I mean, the Aquidneck Island, Portsmouth, Middletown, and that whole stretch in so many different ways is outperforming the rest of the state without making the next step. But you've got a foundation to build on. You've got the right ingredients. You have the special sauce there. So it just, I think you're right on. I think Newport, in a sense, has to seize its own destiny. Again, that sounds cliched, but you've got, your Senate president there seems hell-bent on letting folks from outside the community dictate economic terms to the one group of people that seem to have its act together.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I just learned this yesterday, that both Joe Paolino, can't pronounce his last name, and the Senate president, at one point were against the casino initiatives for Rhode Island, which I find very interesting, because at one point, I was very warm to the idea. I mean, on the surface, look, there's a couple main components. On the surface, this is going to create some jobs. We're going to see 200 jobs. And we're going to get $1.5 million for the first 6 years and $1 million thereafter, right? It all seems great on the surface.
And it's on paper, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
I say that in light of casinos in Atlantic City like Revelle now not only not paying property taxes, but going for property tax concessions. Yeah. And in a sense, going to the communities that they promised to give this lifeblood of this infusion into, and actually looking for support from the community.
Yeah.
It's the hypocrisy is astounding. I think part of it, and there's certain things I can say that I won't ask you to, but it comes down to blatant personal self-interest.
Absolutely. But when you do the research, the data behind this topic is so compelling that it's really astounding why anyone would at least not give consideration to. So, I put the article up in the patch, the same one that you read, and got a lot of strong messages, personal messages sent to me. Some in favor and some against.
Taking a stand.
The ones that were less than nice were kind of to the tune of, why do you want to kill jobs in Rhode Island? Why do you want to kill jobs in your community here in Newport? This is a great way to create jobs. The fact of the matter is that it really isn't. The type of jobs that are created. Oh, there's the music.
There's the music. John, hold that thought. We're going to come back to you right after the commercial. You're listening to the Coalition on AM 790, coalitionradio.us, Facebook.com/Coalition Radio. We explore all sides of the issues. We're talking with John Flores. He's a city council candidate for the city of Newport. We'll see you back here in just a minute.
Manchester 65 is New England's newest live music and events venue. If you're not completely enjoying your current live music experience, there is another option. Manchester 65 is large enough to support touring acts, yet small enough for that local feel. For upcoming events, go to manchester65.com. Make it your place. manchester65.com.
Art attracts us only by what it reveals of our most secret self, Jean-Luc Godard. National Grid is proud to be a sponsor of the 2014 Water Fire season. Join us as we support Water Fire Providence in inspiring and transforming our community, and enjoy charging stations located throughout the event on select nights throughout the season. National Grid supports water fire for you and our community. Keep the fires burning with us and donate today. Visit waterfire.org.
Use your unique talent to help end hunger. The 1 of 52 Hunger Network is a grassroots movement that allows you, as an individual, to have a major impact on ending hunger. No fees, only action in just 1 week a year. Join this Strength in Numbers network at oneof52.net. Do you have an upcoming party, gathering, or social event? Want experienced mobile sound entertainment? Then contact DJ Psycho Eddie. Having worked with several local and national acts, as well as charities, nonprofits, and the area's best live event venues, DJ Psycho Eddie can get the party started and keep it going. Contact DJ Psycho Eddie today at 401-338-0787 for a free consultation, or look for DJ Psycho Eddie on Facebook.
And we're back. The Coalition Radio, coalitionradio.us. And again, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Coalition Radio. I've got City Council candidate John Flores with me, and we were just going to get into some of the overriding issues. We call them here the big lies. Of course, we're asking. John's an adult, so he's going to take the high road. But John, you still with us?
I am.
Well, let's go into some specifics in the time we've got left.
Sure.
What do you see as the principal problems with just the whole idea?
Well, how much time do I have?
we're going to have you on again. We want you to, John. I think we want you to be a roving reporter for us.
Okay.
We also because we want to get a sense too of if you live in the mainland Rhode Island and you depend on the Providence Journal, and hopefully this will change with new ownership, you're given very little feel for the day-to-day politics of Newport Island and the whole Aquidneck Island issue. So we want to have you on again. But give us some real – if you're listening or you listen to our podcast, which is on iHeartRadio, or it'll be distributed through No Casino RI. If you listen to this and you hear someone like yourself saying no to jobs, and you're sitting there and you're either underemployed or partially employed, or you're sweating about it, and this sounds crazy to you, there's money out there. People like me argue that casino gambling is not only going to not save Rhode Island, it's the existence of gambling on the state level is one of the reasons we're in the predicament we are right now. So what say you, John?
Okay. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to talk about the Innovation Hub or the Business Incubator first. If I have some time at the end, I want to talk about some very specific data that they've found that really demonstrate the negative economic effects of casino. Okay, so right now there's a very exciting project here in Newport, and it's called the Innovation Hub, and sometimes it's also referred as the incubator, as a business incubator. Now, basically, with this, it's a facility that's made up of entrepreneurs, early-stage startups, and typically these participants, they're given benchmarks for growth and hiring. They get support, they share resources, they help facilitate growth. And the average period for this incubation for the entrepreneurs is about 33 months. Right now there's about hundreds of these all over the U.S. and hundreds all over the world. Even in Africa. Africa's getting on the bandwagon too. There's an average of one incubator being created every 2 weeks in Africa. And the broad purpose of these hubs is to create real wealth, long, sustainable, economic flourishing that brings technology jobs, biomed jobs, and green jobs to communities like ours, right? And some people are like, that's a pipe dream. We need jobs right now. We need jobs now. But to give you an idea of how powerful these business incubators are, the one in Texas, the one in Austin, the Austin Technology Incubator, that one has generated 6,500 jobs.
Wow.
Alone in Austin, and has generated about $880 million in revenue for the city of Austin. These things are the real deal. So the viewers at home might be asking, well, how does this relate to the casino? Right? They're two different things, and why can't they coexist? Well, a few weeks ago, there was a meeting here in Newport with the North End Planning Committee, and the Denver-based Matrix Group, who's our consultant with the Innovation Project. I believe they're based out of Denver. An audience member asked the Matrix Group's Donald Brandis, who's one of their vice presidents, what the casino project would do to the future of the Innovation Hub. And he was very adamant that it may not get off the ground. And he urged proponents of the Innovation Hub to, and I quote, take to the streets. Now, for me, this is a very critical piece of the debate that very few people are considering and really need to pay careful attention to. Because the clear fact is that tech investors, biomed investors, they don't want to invest in casino cities. That's a fact. And what we currently have right now, that's there. People are like, oh, we already have a casino in place, but it's not really a casino by its real definition. It's a big, ugly warehouse that exists that has a bunch of electronic card games. Now, they go through with the full, fledged casinos. That's when all these negative economic, criminal, and social implications come into play. So for me, this is a really important piece of the conversation because I'm interested in long-term, real, sustainable jobs that are going to fuel our economy for the long term. So this casino initiative and the jobs that it's going to create, it's really a short-term fix. And I just don't think that it's really in the best interest of our community and for the long term.
If you look at cities like Atlantic City, if you look at cities like Biloxi, Mississippi, any of the urban areas where casino gambling has just sort of landed, sort of like the blight that it is, you don't see the ensuing innovation districts. You don't see the ensuing capital investment. And let's talk about the difference in jobs, too. I mean, I will never be one, having worked my way through school in a variety of service jobs, I will never be one to denigrate the dignity of hard work, nor will I pass on the importance of employment at any level. But at the same time, when you talk about the spin-off of just sheer wealth that occurs when you have one of these technology businesses land in your community, the difference in wage levels is staggering, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And it's real long-term sustainable growth. And you brought up Atlantic City. The city's in complete economic shambles. And during the course of my research, a lot of Atlantic City figures came up and staggering. I mean, their casino gambling revenue is down 46%. 46% from its peak. In Connecticut, slot revenues are down 34%, right? They opened up, the newest casino in Atlantic City opened up, I believe it was April of 2012. This year they've already filed for bankruptcy twice, and they expect to probably close before the end of the year. So people say, well, how is that going to impact Newport? Well, it's going to have a huge impact because, they've, promised to give the city $1.5 million, the owners, and after 6 years, $1 million, and they made all these promises. Well, guess what? If the revenues aren't coming in because there's an oversaturation of the market of these casinos, I don't think we're going to be paid any of the money that's being promised to us. So that's another really important variable that people need to consider.
There's absolutely no personal guarantee on the line for any of these alleged high-level contributions that are going to make.
No.
And if you notice, those contributions are typically weighted to the early part of the project, at which point the significant investors have typically fled or typically sold off their investment. Because most folks in the investment community understand that it's the early cycles when you recognize any real profit from these casinos. And that's largely based on the increased dependence on the local market for casino revenues, particularly in light of the proximity of new realized, in-place, or proposed casinos literally within less than an hour's drive in any direction from the proposed Newport installation.
Absolutely.
There's, as they say, there's no there. At this point, why not promise $100 million in construction, $500 million? Why put any limits on it at all? Because it's it's invented. The folks providing these numbers, the folks providing these studies are people with direct vested interests in the construction of the casino itself. Now, that's not illegal.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even go so far as to call it immoral. but it certainly doesn't represent an honest broker's third-party, separate, distinct interpretation of what's actually going to happen. Sure. And yet, at the same time, the costs that are triggered by this, in terms of increased educational costs, increased infrastructure. I mean, Newport is bursting at the seams right now in certain cases. How does adding this, which is going to represent a redirection of income out from Newport, it will cripple local businesses? I mean, talk about for a second the whole. You've got fabulous restaurants down there. What happens when a casino moves in? Are they encouraging people to go downtown to Thames Street to eat out?
It will no doubt have an impact, absolutely, on local businesses. Property values go down. According to the American Realtors Association, property values typically go down in casino areas, and that has implications on tax revenues collected by property taxes. And another thing that the casino developers aren't saying, they don't tell you in all this propaganda that they're disseminating, is that they're huge hidden costs. In one study that can be found, it's the 1999 study on national impact. The 1999 National Impact Study, and this could be found on the American Bar Association's website, found that there's about $40 billion a year spent on the result of gambling ramifications, such as lower productivity, social services, creditor losses, the prison system, public assistance programs, and that's serious. Let me give you a tangible example that pertains to that. So in Ledyard in Connecticut, where the Fox casinos are, they found that in just 1999, in 1 year, when they added all the losses related to the casino, related to crime, general assistance, social services, or zoning enforcement, litigation, I believe there's a couple of other ones in there, that the total losses that were directly related to the casino in those areas were $2.2 million. That's just for 1 year that they calculated in that study. So, you apply that here, all the resources that are expended as a result of this casino. Really, it's going to negate any of these short-term gains that people are looking at the surface, and it's going to have some pretty serious consequences long-term.
The last time there was significant discussion of another casino in Rhode Island, folks like PPAC, folks like Trinity, folks like the Providence Restaurateurs Association, a variety of different entertainment venues all rose up in opposition because you're using state-supported casino income to subsidize low-cost or no-cost entertainment, which represents direct competition and ultimately annihilation of one of the few installed economic bases we have here on the mainland, which, of course, is the entertainment and restaurant industry. What we do, in a sense, is convert income, which was private sector based, generated into small businesses across the state, and redirect that to the casino interests, which then pay a portion to the state in the form of a tax. So it really is a regressive tax. And then the rest of the money leaves in the form of capital flight to outside investors, leaving none of the typical regenerative effects of local spending in the community. It just wipes it out. It turns it into a black hole.
You're right. It's a net zero economic effect, essentially. That's what it comes out to.
John, listen, we're going to have you on again in the next couple of weeks.
Great.
It was great for you to call in. We do want to have you in studio coming up soon because we also want to talk about the future of Newport in just a positive way as well. John, thanks again. John,
you got it. Thank you for having me.
Where can we find you on the web?
You can find me at johnlorez.com. That's John, John, F as in Frank, LOREZ.com.
Great. Good luck on the election trail, and we'll be talking to you shortly.
Take care. Have a great one. Bye-bye.
Attention gardeners, farmers, growers, homesteaders, and horticulturalists. Coming soon to 1889 Post Road in Warwick, Rhode Island, it's The Grow Store. For all your indoor gardening supplies, it's The Grow Store. Mike's Professional Tree Service offers top-of-the-line tree removal, trimming, stump grinding, stump removal, and so much more. Mike's Professional Tree Service will do everything to safeguard your home and property and is fully licensed and insured. Call them today at 401-823-7485 for a free estimate on tree service, tree removal, trimming, and tree care. That's 401-823-7585. Mike's Professional Tree Service are the tree experts serving all of Rhode Island. Online at mikesprotree.com. That's mikesprotree.com. Attention gardeners, farmers, growers, homesteaders, and horticulturalists. Coming soon to 1889 Post Road in Warwick, Rhode Island, it's The Grow Store. For all your indoor gardening supplies, it's The Grow Store. Midday Records is a label that is comprised of local artists and exists for the sole purpose of helping other local artists find new opportunities and to help build a more thriving New England music scene. Midday Records hosts the area's fastest-growing music-related networking event, the Midday Social, books Midday Records presents shows throughout New England, releases compilations featuring local music, promotes bands through the Midday blog, are the co-founders of Music for Pause, and has recently started an artist development and management division. Stay up to date with Midday Records by checking them out on your favorite social media site like Facebook and Twitter, and find them online at middayrecords.com. That's middayrecords.com.
Welcome back to the Coalition. Have you detected a theme within our music yet here if you listen every week? Yeah, One Love. That's what I've got for Rhode Island. So, I'm sitting in Chicago's O'Hare Airport this afternoon on my way back, trying to make it back in time for the show. And I grabbed a copy of the New York Times. Now, the New York Times, by the way, costs about $70 if you buy it anywhere outside of New York City. It's rather astonishing. And our next guest, Jared, are you out there with us? Jared, are you out there?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me, Pat?
I can hear you just fine. So Jared, I'm sitting here and I'm reading through, the Happy Paper, the section where they talk about trends, which, clearly I'll never be able to take advantage of in the restaurants. And then I see on the Sunday Review section where the Sons of the New York Times weigh in a flag which represents a hybrid of a certain leaf and the United States of America. And I almost fell off my little undersized chair in the airport when I saw the editorial. Now, this is not an op-ed piece, by the way. This is the editorial, Repeal Prohibition Again. Now, folks, if you're a long-time listener to the show, you know Jared Moffett. Jared is a Brown University graduate. He's very active in the legalization to regulate. Runs it. Jared, give us a number of the committees that you're involved with.
Yeah, so Regulate Rhode Island is the main campaign that I work on to tax and regulate marijuana similar to alcohol. So that's our main coalition that we work with. Right.
And when last we spoke with Jared, we thought we were on the run-up to at least a vote on the issue here in Rhode Island, legalization and regulation of marijuana. There was some political turmoil. I've heard there was some upset in the legislature this year. Something happened. There was a raid or something. I don't know. And that kind of threw things out of the loop. To their credit, these folks have continued to toil behind the scenes, building and continuing to refine the message and to build a coalition that hopefully will lead Rhode Island to being at least, we had hoped the second or third state, but at least maybe in the top 10 at something to get this issue passed. And now we have the great lady, the New York Times, weighing in saying it is time. In their words, marijuana is far less dangerous than alcohol. The federal government should repeal the ban on marijuana. What was your initial reaction, and what are your thoughts about how this affects the movement? A little bit of technical issues here. We're going to be posting this, by the way, to the website for those of you who aren't willing to spend the $60 or $70 necessary to read the New York Times. Let me just read a little bit. And I know it's sort of boring to read things on the radio, but just a quick synopsis. It took 13 years for the United States to come to its senses to end prohibition. 13 years in which people kept drinking, otherwise law-abiding citizens became criminals, and crime syndicates arose and flourished. It has been more than 40 years 40 years since Congress passed the current ban on marijuana, inflicting great harm on society just to prohibit a substance far less dangerous than alcohol. We got you, Jared?
Yeah, I'm back.
All right. So, as I was asking, your initial thoughts, but also, the great thing about media here in America is that, because the alternate media can be spot on and right on top of the subjects as they happen, it's fascinating to me when two very disparate subjects come together in really one message. This past week, we've been, and I say treated in air words, to pictures of destitute children being forced over the border from some of the most dangerous narco states in the world. Jared, do you think it's a fair comment to say that the war on drugs has created, in part, and should take partial responsibility for what's going on with our immigration crisis down in Texas and down in the Southwest? And again, what was your reaction to all of this?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I don't think enough people are recognizing that. I mean, I think that the drug war has been responsible for the lion's share of the violence down there. These children are fleeing some countries that are now murder capitals of the world because of a drug trade. We're essentially the number one consumer of drugs here in the United States, and, we're considering ending marijuana prohibition, considering changing our laws here, but we still insist on funneling money, weapons, to continue the war in our neighbors' countries, which I think is hugely immoral. So,
well, I mean, it took no less than the president, I guess, of the Honduras, which is becoming one of the most violent places on earth, as a result, directly tied into narco trafficking, which is a market created directly by prohibition to remind Americans that we are, in a sense, responsible. Our continuing demand through these illegal channels that we have created ourselves is directly responsible for a lot of violence happening on the southern border.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, talk about an uncomfortable truth. But again, what was your initial reaction? I mean, you and I have known each other a while now. Were you shocked? Was this a surprise?
About the editorial?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the New York Times has kind of been behind on the marijuana issue for a while. I mean, so, I hope a lot of people don't write this off and think this is some, liberal thing happening here, because they've actually been pretty conservative on drug policy issues and on marijuana in particular. So it was a huge surprise to me. I didn't see it coming. But it's a really historic moment. I mean, when, a paper of that magnitude, and again, you pointed out it's an editorial, not an op-ed, takes a stance like that. I mean, that's giving us activists a lot of energy and momentum.
To what degree, and I mean, this is us just, hypothesizing here, to what degree do you think this editorial may have been stimulated by what's happening down on our southern border?
I think that probably did play into it a little bit. I think what also is clear from what was written is that they see that public support is just soaring for this. I mean, I think that was another big driver, is that more people are talking about this. Fewer political leaders are willing to defend the current policy, and more leaders are stepping out to reform. So I think they're just seeing the which way the wind's blowing, and that prompted them to have a serious conversation about the topic.
They talk about in here, and this is the New York Times speaking, the social costs of the marijuana laws are vast. 658,000 arrests for marijuana possession. We have one of the highest levels of incarceration in the world. I'm not talking about the free world, the world, as we know it, planet Earth. And yet at the same time, despite what some of these hodgepodge citizens groups who want to increase the militarization of our own domestic police force in order to try and overwhelm the problem. Carolyn Medeiros' group comes to mind right away, where she's quite happy to literally have tanks and armored personnel carriers taking out 15-year-olds on the corner of South Providence. It just doesn't work, though. That's the frustration. I mean, can we all accept that our response to this on every single level is an abject failure?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What do you think? What are your plans in the legislature coming up? And do you think this is something you guys can sort of use as a springboard?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think that this is going to allow us to really take the conversation in this state to the next level. I mean, there's just a growing body of support for it. I mean, we've got more data coming out of Colorado and Washington. And you're right, Pat. I mean, everyone sees that the war on drugs has been a total failure. We've poured over $1 trillion into this war. All we have to show for it now is that we have 25% of the world's prison population, despite only having 5% of the total population. So, I mean, we've we're supposed to be the land of the free, and we're home to the largest prison population in the world. I mean, people are tired of this, and I think this is definitely going to give us more energy.
You know, there's a couple of, I mean, it's a very brief editorial, but there's just, again, it bears rereading and rereading. Let me quote again. There are no perfect answers to people's legitimate concerns about marijuana use, but neither are there such answers about tobacco or alcohol, and we believe that on every level, health affects the impact on society and law and order issues. The balance falls squarely on the side of national legalization. All right, and that one. Imagine this. Now, I mean, as a libertarian, Jared, you and I have joked many times about the differences between folks like yourself, who consider themselves progressive, and myself, libertarian. Imagine this: put decisions on whether to allow recreational or medicinal production and use where it belongs at the state level. Imagine the New York Times just came out for states' rights.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Yeah, I mean, they make the important point that, you know, it may be debatable whether we want to look at something like marijuana as a right, you know, and they clearly think that it's not a civil or human right. But, you know, that's the important distinction, I think, is that they're saying, look, the way we do it with alcohol is we let states and counties make their own laws regarding how that's going to be regulated and when stores are going to be open, et cetera, and we should do the same thing with marijuana because it should be up to the local towns, the states themselves to decide that. And I loved how they made that comparison to alcohol over and over, because I think that really puts the debate in the light it needs to be in when, you know, we have a much more dangerous substance being consumed by millions of Americans, and, you know, no one's going to jail over that. We don't have mass incarceration over alcohol. You know, then why are we causing such a fuss and wasting all these resources for marijuana when it's a lot, you know, less dangerous than alcohol? So I love that they made that comparison.
What are your plans now? You're going into a brief period here, a little bit of a quiet time because you've got the silly season, the election's taking place. You know, I don't see this as becoming an election level issue given the economy. But what are your plans coming up in terms of the next session? Are you recrafting the same law that you proposed, or are you pretty much just going to go right back at it with the same legislation?
Yeah, I mean, we might have a few, you know, small tweaks, but the basic idea of the laws, you know, and the bill is still going to be intact, and we're going to, you know, push for the same basic idea, which is we want to license retail stores, we want to license cultivation facilities, we want to have taxes and regulations on an industry just like we do with alcohol. So there may be some tweaks that we make, but basically we want to use the same bill, and we're basically in preparation mode right now. We're you know, expanding our coalition and sort of preparing to make that economic argument. In fact, that, you know, I think there is some urgency to the issue because as anyone can see, you know, legalization is inevitable at this point, and I think Rhode Island has an opportunity. If we can step up first on the East Coast, I think that gives us a huge economic advantage. We're going to have the businesses, the jobs here in our state, which is going to lead to more tax revenue and more economic activity for the state. So I think, you know, we're getting ready to make that argument. I think that's going to be one of our first feet forward, and also to remind people that prohibition hasn't worked and that regulating is going to solve a lot of problems that people are concerned about.
A lot of it's generational, and I think you see a lot of your opposition literally, you know, receding into the background. At the same token, I think it would be remiss of us not to note that this is really, right about now, is the first anniversary of marriage equality, and, you know, 1 year into it, somehow the world hasn't collapsed yet, has it, Jared?
That's right.
Straight people are getting divorced at an increasingly high level.
They get to share in the misery like everyone else.
Everyone else. Listen, Jared, thanks again for coming on so quickly. We appreciate it. We're going to have you on again, as you know, right around election time. Maybe you and I will put a few candidates on the hot seat on this.
Hey, sounds good. Thanks, Pat. I appreciate it.
Have a great week. You've been listening to the Coalition on Talk Radio, AM 790. Facebook.com/Coalition Radio, coalitionradio.us.